Welcome to ARTv. I'm your host, Morgan Ray. On today's program, we have Bronwyn Kidd, an Australian photographer known for her fashion and portraiture. Welcome to the show, Bronwyn.
Thank you, Morgan. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Now tell us a little bit about where you began in the fashion industry. I believe it was in London, correct?
Yeah, I went to London after having done some study at RMIT and failing RMIT, and I assisted some local photographers for a couple of years, and then I went to London. And when I got to London, I hooked up with a friend who was already working as a photographic assistant for some fashion photographers. And when she saw the work that I'd been doing for my folio to take to London, she said, "You must go and meet Hardy Amies." And I didn't realise who Hardy Amies was. I didn't know who Hardy Amies was, but basically he's the couturier for the Queen. He is in the famous Savile Row. So I went off, still not knowing really who he was, took my folio in and started working with him. I was 23 and pretty green, actually, not really understanding, the history behind where I was standing, and what I saw was just a slice of yesteryear that was still happening in 1992, and it was so exciting. The clothes, the ball gowns, the incredible suits, the aristocracy that walked through the door. I wasn't shooting for them all the time, but I did several seasons work for them, and also they asked me to photograph their new bridal collection, which Hardy Amies wanted to shoot at Buckingham Palace, but the Charles and Diana split up just at that time, so that didn't happen. But it was an amazing introduction to what was a really different style of fashion that was going on, because the grunge movement was happening at that time. Yeah. And there I was in couture world while grunge was happening. It was odd, but it was kind of perfect for me.
Right. How was that, being behind the lens and seeing a whole nother world to maybe what was going on in reality? It kind of felt right for me, because growing up, my mum loved sort of Hitchcock movies, and I don't know how many times I saw Rear Window and that whole elegance, and the whole 1940s, the gowns and everything. I suppose it was just an extension of that fantasy world for me, and the way that I shot was right for them. So I was, I was a disciplined classic photographer. I did cinematic lighting. I positioned the gown. It wasn't bridal. It wasn't like you might think of. It was couture. Mm-hmm. It was sort of following in the footsteps of Beaton, Parkinson. The photographers that did all those gown images, and Beaton shot for Hardy Amies also. So, it just felt like a great, perfect start for me, as a young photographer. Right. So, I mean, you were young. You were so young, and you had failed out of college. So, did you just have this style of your own that emerged through just getting and doing the work? Yeah.
When I ended up going part-time because I'd failed the science part of the art degree at college. I just wasn't interested, in that. And so I started assisting, and the photographer that I assisted was very influenced by Richard Avedon and, the classic photographers, Guy Bourdin, the beautiful old world of Horst. And so it influenced me as well, and it's just the right fit. He was the right fit for me. Going to London and working with Hardy Amies was the right fit. And it just felt comfortable. It wasn't, I suppose, until digital that things started to change, and our shooting style changed. And with Photoshop, our shooting style changed as well. But pre all of that, I was working with hand retouchers that retouched in the 1930s for beauty campaigns. You know, I was working with then people who did airbrushing. I was working with Parkinson and Beaton's printers, you know, through Condé Nast, and so the world hadn't changed that much, you know, when I first started from the yesteryear or the time when the people that I really admired were working, you know, like Beaton and Parkinson, etc. Our technique was still the same, but then when digital came, you know, a lot changed. Things got kind of sassier and a little bit more sci-fi and a little bit more, you know, very retouched, and makeup changed and everything changed. And really I had to change with that by that time. Yeah. But I was lucky to have that kind of introduction where I could really firmly, you know, place my feet on the ground and do what I really loved doing. And live in that fantasy world for as long as I could, you know.
Yeah, when you have such vibrant, colorful, well, I mean, actually it varies between black and white and colorful, but you spoke about influence, digital, and you're on Instagram. How has, for example, and how has that been in this digital world with copywriting or people using images? Have you had any experiences?
Yeah, it's very hard. I stick to my principles. I've had some people change colours of my photos when they've, you know, put them on their own feed. I've had even pictures that have been done by clients 30 years ago, then be, you know, a colour picture be turned to black and white. We never shot in black and white, you know, things like that. And I've really put my foot down. I've called them and I said, you can't do this, you know. I think for me, having, you know, had a very, quite a long time, you know, half of my career in analogue, the process is really important. You know, you choose a roll of film because you want a certain look. So when someone takes it and completely changes it, that's really changing the whole structure of the image and the intent of the image. So I call it out, you know, when I can. Some things, though, you just kind of have to let go, and some publicities, you know, just you think, well, I'll just let that go when people sort of, you know, take your image. But you know, it's grey. It's a grey area. It's up to us to enforce how we want it to look.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, on a brighter note,
yeah, sorry.
no, but I think this is relevant,
yeah.
you know, to be talked about, because I've had experience with it, and I've heard about others, so it's copyright is a hot topic. Yeah. But speaking of hot topic, you were just nominated for, or excuse me, you're nominated for the Olive Cotton Award.
Yes,
Tell us about that.
Yeah, really exciting. The image that I put forward, I have been dying to print up, and I'm excited that it's going to be on the wall. It's wonderful. Olive Cotton is an iconic Australian photographer. Her connection with Max Dupain, another iconic Australian photographer. It's a really beautiful award to be a part of, and exhibition to be a part of. I'm looking forward to it. I think it starts mid-July.
Wonderful. Now, what's it been like from, you know, going from London, where you're in fashion, and then you're here back in Australia, and you're now doing your own work? Yeah. I mean, what is that like? Yeah,
it's I came back in 2004, and I sort of hit the ground running doing commercial work. I was doing quite big ad campaigns, and I think, you know, that has its time. I felt like I needed to step out, so I had a bit of time out, and I went back on my archive back to 1985, and I started to revisit all my images, and that was quite a journey. It's like reading an old diary. It's consuming, and it's not something you can do really quickly, but I think it sort of put my love for photography back into perspective, my love for the craft of photography back into perspective, and I think that's something now, you know, moving into, I mean, I've always done images that have been quite highly directed by me and my team, even if it's a commercial job, but now moving into more of a world where I'm just making pictures, you know, for the wall. I'm really excited to put everything I know and have learnt into those images, and for it to be very authentic photography.
And you mentioned team. Do you have a team working with you now?
At the moment, no, but I have always had a team. I've had makeup artists, you know, stylists, my assistants, maybe 3 or 4 of them. I've always had, you know, art directors to work with and creative directors and a client. But at the moment, well, yeah, I'm working on a collaboration with Rosalind Piggott. We're doing some portraits together, which is really exciting. So I suppose that's a new style of team, where her input is really important because they're portraits of her. So that it's a new approach. It's not like the team I'm used to. Well, I still collaborate with my team, but it's more of it's a different type of collaboration.
Oh. And now, what would you like our viewers to know, or like what's a message that you could share for those that are starting out in the field of photography? Do you have any tips for them?
I think it's really important to look at film, look at painting, look at all types of art to sort of find your expression. And I think it's really important to look back on history as well and see what people have done before, because, you know, it's extraordinary what's been done. And for me, myself, I've been recently looking at I recently did an orotone, which is a gold glass print. I've never delved into those worlds, but again, it's sort of it's deepened my understanding of photography. I think you know, take your time, research, experiment, and above all, you know, enjoy it. Yeah,
that's well said. And before we leave, for those that want to follow you and find you, you're represented by the Mars Gallery.
My Mars Gallery by Andy, which is amazing. And yes, I have my website, bronwynkid.com.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you.
Well, Tony, another great program with an artist with so much experience.
Yeah, Bronwyn, a classical photographer, really. And what a history, starting out, well, failing the science part of her arts degree or something at RMIT. That's funny, because then she gets a break in London with a royalty associated photographer.
Oh my goodness, to be there and see those gowns and like everything going on, and then the contrast to the grunge scene. Wow.
Exactly, that's what I was having a chuckle about, because grunge time, which she was loving, and then, wow, her work was so far removed from that sort of style. It was so refined, I suppose, with royalty.
Sure.
Yeah.
And she's photographed some of the many Australian icons. So it's interesting. I'm looking forward to her new venture and kind of having a new voice and seeing what that looks like.
Yeah, and also she's drawing on all of her experience, because she worked in the days of professional retouches and airbrushing, which digital age now, which she was smart enough to quickly know to adapt to. You know, I think when you've got that up your sleeve, you've just got that extra experience. And I also love the fact that she stands up and fights for the copyright.
Yes.
Yeah, because that is often overlooked. You know, you put it to the side as an artist, but it is, it's a good reminder for all artists, you know, take some time, protect your work.
And get permission.
Yeah, that's right. Or give a credit.
Exactly.
And anything going on at any of the galleries?
Well, something in relation to 2 galleries. So one of the artists from Mars Gallery, Atonga Tem, she had a portrait that she did, a self-portrait taken of herself, and the Australian Tapestry Workshop actually wove it into a tapestry.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it's beautiful work to see art going into another art form.
Great stuff. Well, I think that's about it for today. So great show. Good on you, Morgan.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, send us an email at ideas@studioemedia.com.au.
See you next time.